I'm meteorologist Nathan Scott. Welcome to WeatherWise. We are closing out October, head into November. You know what that means? We're going to see the sunset happen earlier for the afternoon hours as we say goodbye to daylight saving time and head back into standard time. Check out this map on what you can expect November 2nd when we take those clocks 1 hour back. We're going to see sunsets happen all across the country before 6 o'clock. But even some sunsets will happen before 5 o'clock. So Portland will have a sunset of 4:55. San Diego 4:56. Denver 4:56. Chicago 4:53. Nashville 4:50. Looks like the earliest sunset happens in Bangor, Maine of 4:21. And what I want you to notice is right where the time zones are very close together, where those cities are, that's where the sunsets really happen earlier. So you see it's right on the line of Las Vegas, certainly Chicago, and then also Nashville. Knoxville, they're Eastern time zone, so their sunset would be more in the 5 o'clock hour versus the 4 o'clock hour. Let's talk about the history behind daylight saving time and why do we do this every single year? Because I know a lot of people are saying, well, I wish we have daylight saving time stick around permanently. We'll get more into if that was the case here in Arkansas coming up throughout this episode, and what if we stuck with standard time throughout the entire year as well. But here's the history behind daylight saving time and how it all came to be about in the first place. This is information from the Old Farmer's Almanac, by the way. So Benjamin Franklin did have somewhat of an idea back in the 1700s, but it was really William Willett. He was an Englishman, 1907, who pushed members of Parliament and also the U.S. Congress to put clocks 20 minutes ahead. The idea was not received well at all. In fact, a lot of the community ridiculed it and said it was a sin because you were lying about true time. So that idea did not really get anywhere. World War I happened though, 1915, and the country of Germany was the first to go ahead and change time. They used it as a fuel-saving measure. Then Britain got into the act in 1916, adopted a 1 hour ahead between May 21st all the way through October 1st. Here in the USA, it happened at 1918. After the government supported the change, with the group stating, the enemies have been up an extra hour, they're working, we're behind, so we need to follow suit and also get with the rest of the times in Europe. But that did not last very long because once the war was pretty much over, the farmers said, no, we don't support this. The cows don't know what time it is. And they said that basically the change was favored by office workers and the leisure class. So they were done with daylight saving time by 1920. So that small period only lasts for 7 months. But then it came back again. World War II, 1941. To save fuel, daylight saving time returned to the United States. After the war was over, states decided on what they wanted to do. If they wanted to keep it or if they wanted to go ahead and stick with standard time. This caused major confusion, you can imagine, especially going from state to state with all the train services and the bus services. So Congress came together and said, we need to have a law that all states need to abide by daylight saving time. And this was known as the Uniform Time Act in 1966. Everybody followed the law. However, Hawaii and Arizona, the legislatures there found loopholes in the law and did not follow the change. And still, they don't follow the change. They don't do daylight saving time in parts of Arizona and also, I think, Hawaii. 1986, the period of daylight saving time increased. The first Sunday in April instead of the last day of April. That was the change. And the goal was to conserve oil for the production of electricity. Then 2005, all of Indiana observed this. And that's because before this act happened in 2005, Indiana, there were several counties right on the line of the Eastern time zone and also Central time zone that decided for themselves whether or not they wanted to go ahead and go with daylight saving time or stick with standard time, just because of the location of where they were and how workers had to go back from one city to the next. May get a little confused if they weren't all on the same time. Energy Policy Act of 2007, most of the USA sprung forward on the second Sunday in March and would fall back the first Sunday in November. So it has been changing throughout the course of the years, because before it was April to October, and now we're extending it into March all the way through really the first week of November. The Sunshine Protection Act. Now this was enacted by Congress, it was a bill that failed Congress, did not make its way through the House. It passed the Senate, the U.S. Senate, but it did not pass the U.S. House. And this is still possibly going to be happening in the next several years. It has to be reintroduced to Congress for anything to happen, but a lot of states alone have said, we're going to go with daylight saving time if this act does become law, which again, that may cause more confusion with the train services and the bus services. It's a huge debate. We all know some people love the idea of having the sunset happen later in the winter versus being so early, because people get off work, you don't have a lot of opportunity to enjoy the outdoors if the sunset is happening 4:30 or 5 o'clock. Permanent daylight saving time. Now, when we take a look at this, let's say we don't fall back whatsoever. And this is the breakdown. So the latest sunrise, if we do not fall back and head into standard time, Little Rock, the latest sunrise would be 8:17. Amarillo, Texas, the latest sunrise would be 8:56. Nashville, 7:58. Omaha, 8:49. Look at Fargo, North Dakota, though. Their sunset or sunrise would not happen until 12 minutes after 9 o'clock. And you think, if it was cloudy there, if there was winter weather, of course, it's Fargo, North Dakota, it would probably stay fairly dark all the way until about 10 o'clock in the morning. Along with that, the sun helps us melt ice and snow on the roads. You see that here in Arkansas. We'd have black ice, but then the sun comes up above the horizon and those roads start to thaw out fairly quickly, but it takes some time. So if the sunrise is later, it's going to take more time for that black ice and ice to also disappear from the roadways. And instead of about 10 o'clock, it may take 11 o'clock or noon when there's just a little bit of ice or snow or slush on the roads. There's Dallas. Sunrise would be happening around 8:30. And then your earliest sunset, that happens 5:57 Little Rock, 6:34 Amarillo, around 5:30 in Nashville, 5:54 in Omaha, Fargo, 5:38, and around 6:20 in Dallas. So that's just the idea of what would be happening across the country. But we're here in Arkansas, so I made this map for us Arkansans, and this would be the latest sunrise that would happen if we kept permanent daylight saving here in Arkansas. The sunrise would not be happening until 8:13 in Jonesboro. Wouldn't happen until close to 8:30 in Fayetteville and Fort Smith. You have to keep in mind, kids go to school. It would still be dark, essentially, as the kids would be headed to the bus stop if we continue with this situation. Sunrise will be happening 8:19 in Hot Springs, 8:23 in DeQueen, 8:16 in Camden, and 8:12 in Monticello. Another way to look at this, sunrise after 8 o'clock right now, if we kept it as is for this year, the latest sunrise would be at 7:30. That's November 1st. So that's before we make that change to standard time going into Sunday. If we kept daylight saving time all winter long, we would have 68 days where the sunrises would be after 8 o'clock. It would happen December 4th all the way until February 8th. So that's just something to think about when you want to talk about, oh yes, I want more daylight for the afternoon into the evening hours, but there's a price to pay because it's going to be dark when you go to work for December and also January if we were to keep daylight saving time. Now, what if we kept standard time throughout the entire year? Here's the story on that in Arkansas. Your sunsets would be 7 o'clock, May to August, and then the summer sunrises between 5 a.m. until 6 a.m. across the state. Your winter sunsets 5 p.m. until 6 p.m. Your winter sunrises 6:30 until 7 o'clock in the morning. So that would be the good news to keep standard time for the entire year. We just wouldn't have any sunsets past 8 o'clock. That would be the disadvantage looking in the other direction. Sunsets before 5:30, they're happening. We make this change from daylight saving time to standard time this Sunday. Here's what you can expect in your city. We're going to see those sunsets around 5:05 in northeast Arkansas. That's where the earliest sunsets will be taking place, in northeast Arkansas. 5:04 in West Memphis, 5:09 in Batesville, and then it's 5:14 in Harrison, 5:19 in Fayetteville. The latest sunsets will be happening in southwest Arkansas, 5:23 in Texarkana, 5:23 in DeQueen, 5:17 in Arkadelphia, and 5:17 in Camden. Here in central Arkansas, it's primarily right around 5:13, 5:15. But yeah, that's going to be a change considering, when you were headed home from work, the sun would still be up. And now that sun is pretty much going to be below the horizon and will continue to lose more and more time going into the rest of November and also December. Those sunrises or sunsets will be happening early and earlier. So here's the earliest sunsets. I went through, I looked at all these cities and found the earliest sunsets across Arkansas, and they happen in the beginning of December. So by the beginning of December, the sunset here in Little Rock will be happening at 4:57. In Texarkana, it happens after 5 o'clock, 8 minutes after 5 o'clock for that area, 7 minutes after 5 o'clock in DeQueen, about 4:58 for you folks in Monticello, 5:02 in Fayetteville, 4:54 in Mountain Home, and the earliest sunset, of course, is going to be northeast Arkansas, where it'll be 4:48 in Jonesboro. Along with the change, it's always a good idea to remember, go ahead and check your smoke detector batteries and your carbon monoxide detector batteries. They may need to be replaced, and if the units are 10 years or older, you want to go ahead and replace that entire unit for smoke detectors and also carbon monoxide detectors, because the sensors may have gone bad and you just don't want to take any chances. So that's all I have to say right now about daylight saving time. We'll, of course, probably recap this as we go from standard time back to daylight saving time, getting into the spring season. Coming up next, Halloween, it's coming this Friday, and we'll take a look at some climatology when it comes to what we've seen in the past here in Central Arkansas for that holiday. Trick-or-treaters are getting ready for the holiday on Friday with Halloween, and we're going to see pretty much nice weather here in Arkansas. We'll see lots of sunshine out there. Temperatures very comfortable into the mid-60s, it looks like. For the trick-or-treaters, it's probably going to drop down into the 50s, so they may need a jacket. But when we take a look at the past Halloweens here, for Little Rock specifically, here's the breakdown. Since 2011, you can see it can be all over the road for the most part. The coolest Halloween on record, and these go all the way back to the 1880s, was 47. That was the high back in 1993. The warmest Halloween on record was 1961, where we saw a temperature of 86. Now, since 2011, our highest temperature, 85, 2016. And then you see lots of 70s showing up there, 2011, 2012. But there have been some chilly Halloween days as well. 49 was the high in 2017, 48 in 2019. Also, rain. We're making that transition from summer to fall. We usually have these big systems that can bring significant rainfall at times. So where you see the raindrops, that is where for that day there was at least around 1/10 of an inch of rain recorded at Little Rock. So we had rain 2013, 2015, 2017, 2018, and we also had rain last year. And the temperature last year warmed up to 76 degrees. So a wide variety can happen here in the natural state just because that battle zone with the colder air trying to make its way in here from Canada and Alaska meets up with the still warm and moist air from the Gulf that can sometimes produce severe weather. We do see severe weather, of course, in the fall season. That's the second severe weather season here in the natural state. And the chance of severe weather starts to ramp up going into November just because we're seeing more interaction with the cold and warm air masses, and we also have usually some jet energy as these systems make their way across the country. Let's talk about November now because we are going into November, and here's some stats for November. The hottest temperature that we've seen so far during the month of November, 86 back in 1955. Perry, you can take this full now. The coldest temperature we've seen during the month of November at Little Rock, 10 degrees back in 1880. The wettest November on record, well, that was 2011 with 14.57 inches of rain. And the driest, well, we only saw 0.09 of an inch back in 1910. On average, your temperatures start out into the upper 60s for highs, nighttime lows typically into the mid 40s. But by the end of the month, those average highs drop down into the 50s, and your nighttime lows are usually into the mid 30s. Average rainfall is 4.72 inches, and there's your sunrise and sunset, 7:29 for November 1st, 6:15 going into the sunset time. And then by the end of the month, your sunrise happens 6:57 and your sunset happens at 4:58 to close out the month of November. Now, sometimes we already went over, it can get warm here. 80-degree November days, they do happen on occasion, not every year, but here's a little breakdown. Since 2011, one 80-degree day for that year, same 2012, 2013, and you see the top of the chart, we've got the highest temperature associated with those 80-degree numbers, or the highest temperature recorded for the month of November during those corresponding years. So 82, 83 in 2011, 2012, 84 in 2013. We did not reach 80 degrees for the whole month of November in 2014 or 2015, and then we had 4 days of 80-degree heat. 2016, also 2017, 2018, 2019. That's when I arrived here in Arkansas, and those summers were not too bad, and we actually had a fall that year. I think we actually had some snow in November for one of those years. I was like, where did I move to? I was surprised to see that happen in November here in Central Arkansas. I know it's more typical in North and Northwest Arkansas, but the numbers only topped out into the low 70s for both of those years. Then we're up to 2 days of 80-degree heat in 2020. 77 was the high in 2021. And we've been in a stretch of temperatures reaching at least 80 degrees one time for the past 3 years, 2022, 2023, and also last year. So we'll have to see what happens this year. The most happened back in 1978 when we had 6 80-degree days, and the highest temperature, 86. That was back in 1955. What can we expect for this November? Well, we'll just have to wait and see. It all depends on a little bit of La Nina trying to kick its way in, because there has been a La Nina developing over into the Pacific Ocean, and coming up on a new episode of WeatherWise here in the next few weeks. I'll just have to look at more data. We'll go over La Nina and why every La Nina is not the same. Here in Arkansas, La Ninas, they can have a huge impact on our winter weather situation, or a minor impact, and that's just because we're not influenced by La Nina like more of the country is. La Nina really affects the Pacific Northwest, the Pacific area, also the Northern Plains. We're right on the edge of those influences of La Nina and also El Nino here in the natural state of Arkansas. But we'll go over, one, what La Nina is and what strength the La Nina is expected, because the different strengths will determine on how much of an impact it may have for us here in the natural state. We'll look at past snow events when trying to see a relationship of La Nina versus El Nino, and also, of course, severe weather. Typically, when we have a La Nina, our severe weather chances do go up here in the Mid-South. Again, that is coming up in future episodes of WeatherWise. But for now, that's all I've got to say here on this episode of WeatherWise. Thanks for tuning in. If you have any idea that you want me to cover, any topic, doesn't necessarily have to be about weather. It can be about other sciences, because as you've seen, I brought in some interviews. We had the Creator of Diamonds interview last episode. That was really fascinating. Maybe we'll bring in somebody to talk about quartz, because it is the quartz capital of the world in Montgomery County. So we'll have to see what's happening with that for a future episode. But let me know. You can contact me on my Facebook page. Just look up Nathan Scott, THV11, or you can also email me at nscott@thv11.com. As always, thanks for watching WeatherWise, and I will see you again real soon.